recording first, and then I'll repeat everything. Perfect. So, welcome to the UKEA STEM Pro, an educational STEM program for young researchers focused on building strong partnerships between universities and industry in Ukraine. UKEA STROM is an initiative of the Fund of the President of Ukraine for Education, Science and Sports, delivered in partnership with the University of Warwick, with the supports of the UK-Ukraine Academic Diaspora Network and the UK Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Well, it's a great pleasure to welcome our speaker today, Professor Tom Montenegro Johnson, Deputy Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, Impact, Knowledge, Exchange and Partnerships. So welcome, Tom, and over to you.
Thanks, Ileana, and thank you all very much for turning out to hear what I have to say. I will try my very hardest to make it worth your while. By quick way of introduction, my name is Tom Montenegro Johnson. I'm a professor of applied maths here at Warwick, and I'm also the DPVC for research, STEM ICEP. And what does that mean? Well, it means I work directly for the Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research, who's responsible for all research at the University of Warwick. And my remit covers STEM subjects, including medicine. So it's STEM with two M's. And that's kind of all the impact that occurs in the STEM disciplines, as well as just general research strategies. So things like our response to AI, innovation, which loosely means making it easier for our academics to spin out companies and engage with business partnerships, knowledge exchange, and partnerships. And partnerships is kind of the international element. So in our international strategy, I sit on the international executive and I make sure that research is represented in all that. So it's quite a broad remit. And critically, I've only been doing the job for 6 months. So I'm still roughly at the time where I can fuck up slightly and there aren't any major repercussions, which is a fun place to be. Today, I think that 6-month timescale is also important because although I may have been presented to you by Bo and Uliana as a senior academic, in lots of respects, I'm not. So as a result, I'm 38. It's my I finished my PhD 12 years ago or so. So I'm definitely decidedly mid-career. And what I'm going to show you today is a mixture of my own personal reflections and also a little bit about how I have engaged with impact and innovation opportunities and some of the things that we can do as sort of mid-career, mid to early career researchers to make our own departments slightly more innovation positive places to be, and to support the next generation coming up as well, which I think is really important. So that is more or less introductions out the way. I have a quick question. I've looked at all of your bios. Can I just have a quick sort of show of hands? How many people would consider themselves mostly theoretical? You can maybe just give some reaction emojis. So who here considers themselves a predominantly theoretical researcher? I can't see anything coming. This isn't like Teams, is it, Uliana? Where I'd
No, you can actually, but you need to open the full screen. Yeah,
there's a reaction from Alina. Who would consider themselves a fundamentally applied researcher? Okay, a few hands up there. Okay, quite a few more here. Who kind of works in interdisciplinary spaces? There will be some overlap, of course. You don't need to uniquely identify as one or the other. And now finally, Who here is working on solutions directly for non-academic stakeholders, which I think is different to being an applied researcher. So who here is working directly on things for companies? Okay, that's great. So a lot of what I'm going to tell you is probably all very familiar, but I kind of want to run this in a very informal, conversational manner. So if at any point I say something that you disagree with, or you have further questions on, please feel free to interrupt, and we'll take it from there. And then after, hopefully we can have a bit of a question and answer session to think about some of the things that we might be able to do. And it would also help me to know kind of what sort of things you want to get out of your visit to Warwick when you come. Okay, so firstly, definitions. I'm a mathematician, so I like definitions. I mentioned impact and innovation like they are two separate things. And of course, they are deeply intertwined, but broadly speaking, I would say that impact is change in the world arising from underpinning academic research that you've done. And this could be, for instance, a change in policy. It could be that you've changed some sort of World Health Organization guidelines, or the NICE guidelines, and as a result of that, people are being treated a different way, medically speaking. And impact is great and super important. And then on the other side of things, we've got innovation. And what I mean by innovation is really more the kind of spinning out your research. So having a research idea and turning it into its own kind of company, or turning it into a licensing opportunity. So when I say impact and innovation, those are kind of how I distinguish those two things. Next slide, please. I wanted to talk a little bit about, talk about me and my journey. So I did my PhD I finished it in 2013 with John Blake, who sadly passed away shortly afterwards, at the University of Birmingham. And my PhD is in mathematical biology. Specifically, I studied the mathematics of how sperm swim, which gave me a lot of really good conversations for nights out and dinner table chat. One of the great things about my PhD was that my supervisors very early on kind of forced me to meet with senior people and guest speakers and entertain them and talk research with them in a way that I assumed was normal, but actually doesn't happen with lots of PhD students. So that kind of forced networking and forced interdisciplinarity, working directly with people from the medical school, was actually a really good grounding. And I think it's something that actually takes a lot of active work and effort on a PhD supervisor. So I'm very grateful for that from my PhD supervisors. I then received a fellowship to study at the University of Cambridge, which was really nice. This was kind of taking the sperm research and turning it into biomedical microbots, but still very kind of fundamental research, I'd say. It's applied mathematics with a very small a. And DAMT was a wonderful place to work, really, really productive, but I definitely got away from impact in that kind of environment, which was interesting. I was then offered a lectureship back at the University of Birmingham in 2016. And it was here that I actually took on my first leadership role, even as a lecturer. And that was as the departmental impact lead. And it was my job to prepare the department's impact case study submission to our big research assessment exercise, which happens to every UK institution at the same time, has to put in a portfolio of impact case studies once every 7 years. So I was put in charge of that. And at the time, it was really weird and difficult for me, because I was put in the position of having to tell professors what to do and make sure that they did it, and not really having much leverage over them when they inevitably didn't do it. But in retrospect, I'm really glad that I took that role on when I did. It was around this time that I was also promoted to senior lecturer, when I got funded for a Horizon 2020, now Horizon Europe, Future Emerging Technologies grant to work directly with a couple of companies on the mathematics of haptic devices, so touch-sensitive feedback. And this Horizon 2020 grant was a really great way for me to start engaging directly with industries and understanding their needs and what I could provide for them. I then got some further funding, which was much more sort of theoretical in nature, and that got me the promotion to reader. And then I became a full professor in 2022, I think 2022, 2021. And that was because the research assessment exercise had happened, and we'd done really well. So I guess my career advancement has been a 50-50 mix, more or less, since I became a lecturer, of arising from innovation and impact leadership roles and from fundamental research. I then moved to Warwick Maths Institute. Warwick is just a fabulous place to do mathematics. And I shortly after became the director of engagement for CAMAX, which is a sort of cross-departmental impact center, which I will talk about kind of towards the end. And then, as I said, the last 6 months, I've been DPVC research. So the first kind of personal reflection on the next slide, Liana, if I may, is it's not a bad idea to start leadership roles early. I was 4 years, I think, 4 years out of PhD when I took on my first really big leadership role within a department. And it was a lot of work, but it definitely really helped my career and taught me a lot of things. I think in general, academics can leave it a bit too long to realize that we can change the system that we're a part of. Some of the benefits I've kind of outlined here. You get a lot of visibility for a start. It puts you on the radar of senior leaders in your institution much earlier, much sooner than if you're just doing research. And it kind of gives you informal access to this network of leaders within your institution. And that can be a really valuable thing for you. It also sort of shows you how a university works, right? Which is, I don't know how it is in the Ukraine, but in the UK, there are like layers of bureaucracy and committees and subcommittees and budgets and lots of politics that it can be quite a good idea to get some exposure to earlier as you navigate the system. And one of the good things about engaging in leadership as an early career researcher is that you will be learning the same thing if you start as a senior researcher, but you get cut a lot more slack if you start it as an early career researcher. So there's this kind of disproportionate amount of influence for the effort that you put in. The expectations are lower and enthusiasms are higher, and if you can get some good small wins, it can really give you some reputational capital, which is really valuable. The kind of final two things are that it gives you networks that have a very long half-life. So, you get kind of exposed to senior research leaders in other departments who are putting together, and this often goes hand in hand with funding opportunities, right? So if you're in these leadership roles, you find out who is putting together Horizon Europe bids, and you kind of get a seat in the table and you get exposed to more funding opportunities. So in a sense, this leadership role can enhance your research career, but at the same time, there's an opportunity cost. So you definitely spend less time publishing if you do this than if you just focus purely on research, and you often do it without formal control over budgets, and so it feels like a lot of it is trying to nudge people along to go along with your agenda via enthusiasm, which can be a powerful motivator. But you also kind of have CV risk if you want to go international. So, for instance, because I've taken on quite a lot of leadership roles, that's most of what I've done is very UK centric. So if I now wanted to take on an academic role, for instance, in Australia, my CV would probably be less competitive than if I'd purely focused on research. So there's a lot to balance. I think the kind of the summary is that early leadership should accelerate your research identity and not substitute it. Okay, you don't, as an early career researcher, you don't want to just become a manager. That's not why any of us got into this, right? We'd be better paid elsewhere. So that's kind of my start leadership early slide. The second kind of personal reflection I wanted to talk to you about, which I think is particularly important in the impact and innovation space, is the value of mentoring. Can I ask again, who here has an academic mentor by way of reaction? Okay, so quite a few, by no means everyone. I can heartily recommend it. Now, second question, who here is an academic mentor? Ilona, and I believe you're the only one. So there's Nadia as well. I would say it's one of the most rewarding parts of my job, acting as a mentor for others. You obviously have to be very careful about the amount of time that you give it. If you take on a mentee, you do need to commit to seeing them probably twice a semester. I sort of like 3 or 4, a minimum of 3 or 4 times a year, really. Ideally a bit more. You've got to commit to reading their grant and fellowship applications, helping them with mock interview practice and things of this nature. But not only do you get a lot out of it as, from a sort of a personal altruistic reward perspective, but it's also made me a much better manager. And it's made me, I believe, better at giving talks, better at giving interviews, and it's made me better at writing applications myself. Because actually, when you sit on the other side of a fellowship, a grant application, you start thinking, what do I want to see? And when you put yourself from the perspective of someone evaluating something, it makes your own writing much, much stronger. So I don't think you're ever too early in your career to start mentoring people. I'd say as soon as you have a permanent job, you are the one that should be mentoring postdocs. And as soon as you're a postdoc, you are the one who should be mentoring PhD students, because it's so much, the transition is so much fresher in your mind, and your knowledge is so much more relevant and timely compared to more senior people. So I think having a positive mentoring culture in your department is really important, and I would heartily recommend that you all set up mentoring schemes if you can in your departments. In the Maths Institute, we have a really good one set up by Susanna Gomez, and I mentor two lecturers as well as assistant professors, as we now call lecturers in the UK, following the American system. And I also mentor my 3 postdocs, one of whom just got a job in Oxford this morning. So I'm feeling very happy about that. It was a good piece of news. I have also almost continuously throughout my career benefited from a mentor. Bear in mind that you are using up their time. Bear in mind that you don't need to keep the same mentor for the entire time. You need to look for the right mentor right now, not a mentor that's going to last you 10 years. You'll need different people to help you with different things at different stages of your career. If you want to start, for instance, engaging more in impact and innovation, you want to choose a different mentor to if you want to apply for an ERC starting grant, for instance. So definitely pick a mentor. It's like the difference between having a mentor and not having a mentor is like trying to walk through a maze with a map and a chainsaw versus just kind of wandering blindly. It does make a massive difference, and I'm very grateful to all of my mentors. So mentoring is definitely something to benefit from and also to do. It's very important to pay it forwards. Next slide. Yes. I was going to give you a photo of my family, but then I realized this would be recorded, and we're very careful about pictures of the kids on the internet. So these are also very cute, not as cute as my kids, but probably equally as destructive. I think it's very important to talk about family in academia, because actually a lot of academic research culture has been very anti-family. You're supposed to spend all your time coming up with the great discovery, and I don't think that's the kind of environment I want to work in personally. So it's also kind of important, the more senior you get, to continue to stick to your values of prioritizing family and telling people no. I think that gives permission to early career researchers and postdocs to say, actually, I can't do this. I've got a family commitment. So I think having that visibility is very important. You kind of need to make a conscious decision early on, I would say. So I've got 3 children. I've got a 9-year-old and twin 7-year-olds. The reason there's balloons throughout here is because the twins had a birthday party about a week ago, which was really lovely. Once the twins were born, I did no seminars and no conferences or international travel for about 5 or 6 years because it was so intense. And of course, your research during that time suffers, and your research reputation during that time suffers. I do not regret this ever. So and during that time, I've also sort of made it a priority to always try to finish work at 4 p.m. Except when we have things like this going on, except very rarely, and to always sort of tell people that no, I can't make that meeting because I'm going to my child's school for parent teacher day and things of this nature. Family are a really great anchor for me personally, and I think it's just important to say that it's worth prioritizing them. The way to kind of navigate that with still getting stuff done is, I'm afraid to say, become okay with doing about an 80% job on things. So as academics, we're very used to kind of trying to make everything as perfect as possible. Actually, a lot of the things that you do, particularly if you start engaging with leadership, just need to be done well enough. 80–90% probably takes 20% of the time. So that's kind of something to navigate. Finally, my last little thing before we sort of talk about impact and innovation a bit more specifically is it's been really important for me because you end up, if you engage in impact and innovation and research and you have a family, you can feel like you're on constantly, and it's very easy to get burnt out because you're doing lots of activities very quickly and they're very disparate, and your mind is being pulled in lots of different directions very quickly. I think it's very important to find joy or make joy in your research. And for me, a big part of that has been public engagement with research. So here's a couple of pictures of artworks that I created with an origami artist based on my research. It's really nice. If you're a bit artsy, it's really nice to work with artists. They just have a very different way of looking at things than STEM researchers. And there's some proper genuine mathematics here. So I'm just waving to my wife who's going to pick up the kids. The cone you can see on the right, I had to design that for an exhibit in Westminster Abbey, because the artist had to, she couldn't make anything there, and she couldn't hang anything up. So she wanted something that would collapse flat into her backpack, and she could carry all the way from Brighton to London. And she wanted a collapsible cone, which is an interesting sort of mathematical question of what we call flat foldability. And on the left, we've encoded a set of equations into binary, and then done them with this lovely tessellation pattern. So things like that, I would say, have helped keep me sane a little bit when doing all this stuff. So that's probably longer than anyone wanted to hear about me and my personal journey. Let's talk now about impact, which is things you do to change the world with your research. I think a lot about impact and early career researchers, because it seems like there are a lot of risks early on. I don't know can I just ask, who here has been advised by a senior academic not to do impact or impact activities or public engagement or something in favor of publishing more? Has anyone actually had that advice? No, so that's rare. So in mathematics, for instance, you would definitely have at least one or two senior professors who would be like, well, you really don't want to be doing that. Actually, you should be writing your next 80-page journal article, and that's all that matters. So it seems like you're in quite an impact positive environment to begin with, which is really good. But fundamentally, the risk of engaging in impact as an early career researcher is that it's very time intensive, and it can generally it will slow your research outputs. There's no getting around this. It can improve your research outputs for sure, but it will definitely slow them down. And kind of if it goes wrong, it's not always your fault, because it's very dependent on external partners. If you're working, for instance, with an SME, a small to medium-sized enterprise, or a startup, they quite often will follow where the money is. So they might be really interested in you doing some work for them that's going to change the world 1 week, but when they don't get that funding source, they will immediately jump onto the next funding source, which might be completely unrelated. So you will have then put in a lot of time and effort into cultivating a relationship, an impact. Oh, sorry, no, not yet, Uliana.
Sorry, yeah, my fault.
A lot of time and effort into cultivating a relationship that through no fault of your own doesn't register. And you don't get any output from it. Whereas most of us will be able to produce some sort of research output if we turn the same amount of time on it. Perceived loss of scholarly seriousness. It's maybe, from what you've said, less of an issue in your departments, which is really great. But at the same time, there can be expectation creep. Once you start engaging with companies, it's very easier for senior managers to say, oh, Andre is the impact person. Any impact stuff, we'll give it to him, and then impact will happen. And all of a sudden, you're doing more of it than you want to be. On the other hand, it is a really good way to differentiate yourself from your peers. It will give you access to networks outside of the usual kind of conference circuit, including politicians and captains of industry. And it can really help, particularly with Horizon Europe funding, Pillar 2 funding applications. Right? If you've got some track record of delivering impact for industry, it really helps the funding application, and it gives you more career options. And finally, as I keep telling my colleagues who wish that academia was just sipping tea and staring out of windows, impact and innovation are the way the academic world is going. There is an increasing expectation that the research that we do has some tangible benefit. Obviously, that needs to be balanced with pursuing high-risk blue skies research, but impact is certainly never going away. So learning how to engage with it at an early stage in your career is not a bad idea. Next slide, Uliana. So, 2 ways to engage. Assuming you want to do impact and innovation, then we kind of have 2 modalities. One is push, and that is where you have an idea in academia from your research, and you're trying to, it's what we know, and we're trying to push it out to industry. And the other is pull. And that's where industry comes to you with a problem that they want solving, and you help them solve that problem. And no surprises, academics always want to do push, businesses always want to do pull. And actually, by far the easiest way to engage and have impact is with pull research. So the typical features of push engagement is that it starts from a particular research capability or method, or something fundamental that's come out of funded research. The problem is framed by the academics. And there's usually a very high uncertainty about market fit or uptake. We just feel that this is the best way of doing this, and we don't have a market fit for it yet. But because it's the best, we feel like it should be taken up. The strength is that this is kind of more radical and non-obvious innovation, and it's really good at kind of early stage pre-competitive support. So in the UK, we would have, for instance, impact acceleration accounts for this sort of push research, which is about supporting fundamental research ideas to the next stage. And then we would have programs such as iCure, which sort of allow you to test the market capabilities of your research. But I have rarely, if ever, heard of an example of an academic coming up with a new innovation, approaching a company directly and saying, you need to be doing this way, and them just taking it up. So that's typically not how it's done, because often the innovation is not really aligned with industry needs, and there's a very long translation timeline. Pull engagement, on the other hand, is generally less academically interesting, or at least it can be. The industry has a defined need or problem, and they do all the framing of the problem. There are clear success matrix timelines, and you know that this is relevant, and if you solve it, it is going to lead to some impact or change. So you get fast uptake, clear impact pathways. It's usually better resourced. Industry will generally pay for it if it's what they want to begin with. But on the other hand, it's usually a bit more short term. You can kind of start drifting towards a consultancy, which can be a great way to get money in for a university, but it's not why any of us do this. And it generally leads to less original solutions. So ideally, your engagement is a combination of both. What you can do is you can hook companies in with pull research, and once you kind of establish the working relationship, because it's all about relationships, you can start working on push type solutions for some of their deeper, more long-term problems, and you've got a much better chance then of translating those. So that's push versus pull engagement. Next slide, please, Ileana. I'm going to make myself some water. Does anyone have any questions while I just pour myself another glass of Coke? Yes, Ivan.
Yeah, thank you. Actually, tons of questions. Let me maybe ask two of them at least. Regarding self-improvement. So as a researcher, scientist, in any way, yeah, so world is moves on, and a lot of new stuff like comes up. How did you prioritize your time? So did you do it like you learned something new together with your research, or you planned it as a separate time for self-improvement? And second question would be, what you would done differently if you will return to begin of your journey? as a researcher?
Brilliant. Okay, so 2 points there. Firstly, self-improvement. Self-improve by taking on projects in the area that you want to learn with someone who is more aware of that area, who can kind of help you by exposure, or so that way you get an output at the same time as learning on. So it's like learning on the job, we call it. The other way to do that is if you have a particularly gifted summer project student, undergraduate student, or a particularly gifted PhD student, you can give them a project which involves them pushing at the boundaries a little bit of what you want to learn, and then you kind of learn it together with them. And they're also very good at doing literature reviews. So that was that, and then that's two of the ways that I typically use. And I've done that in my research quite a lot, because my PhD research was in micro swimmers, which became very crowded because there was a lot of German researchers. The DFG decided to fund it massively. And so there are loads of Max Planck institutes working massively on micro swimmers. So I've kind of transitioned now. My research is more focused on mathematical materials, soft, porous, poor elasticity, and hydrogels currently, and the intersection with active matter. So that's kind of a way to continually upskill yourself that is less onerous and still provides outputs ticking along. What was your second question? Sorry, Ivan.
Yeah, what would you done differently in your career if you had a chance to start it again?
I got to a position once about 4 years ago where instead of prioritizing and enjoying the work, I started prioritizing and enjoying the chasing the reward. So I started applying for too much grant funding. I got a really wonderful grant from the Leverhulme Trust, and really then I should have focused on delivering that grant and working, but instead I kind of got a little bit hooked on applying for things and getting the reward of receiving them, and then I actually did that for a long time, but I didn't get anything, and it really burnt me out, and it was a massive waste of time. So that's kind of one period. I think this was also personally, it's because after my kids were born, and after COVID, particularly I looked after the children during COVID more than my wife, because she didn't have a flexible job and I did. I really panicked that everyone else had got massively far ahead of me while I was looking after the children. So when I came back, I applied to everything, and I should have just been using that time to do research. So it was, yeah, an unhealthy obsession with the shiny award rather than enjoying the work for the work's sake. Roman, Lilia, I think you were next, actually, weren't you?
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Tom, for your presentation, for the first part of your presentation. It's very interesting. And I have a question about the early stage researcher. And what skills should early career researchers develop to work effectively in large, challenge-led, multi-stakeholder projects? And what skills? And the second, my question is very close to, how can universities better support PhD students and postdocs involved in industry-facing or mission-driven research? So this is very interesting for me. How do you think?
Okay, so skills to develop. The first one I would say that is really important is, as academics, we tend to focus a lot on one particular research area, and we tend to not like to step too far out of our comfort zone. We tend to think that unless we are the world expert on a subject, we have nothing of value to contribute. However, as a mathematician, I have found that most large interdisciplinary projects I can say something reasonably sensible about. And most projects, for instance, benefit from having a reasonable mathematician contributing to them. The second important thing to do with these large multi-scale projects is to learn to network with confidence, and sort of say yes to opportunities without fear. The first big project that I worked on that was like this was the Horizon 2020 grant. And actually the principal investigator had already approached a mathematician from my department about working on the project. And she is a better mathematician than me, by a long stretch. But she had said no, she didn't want to work on it because it was too far from her research area, and she didn't feel comfortable. And so the project came to me, and I said yes, and I figured I would learn on the job, and it worked. And as a result of that, I got a promotion, and I got one of my best papers, actually, which is published in Science Advances, where we found a new universal scaling law for how for the sense of touch. So I think that kind of networking and sort of being able to say yes to opportunities as they sorry, even though you might not feel entirely comfortable with them, is probably a good way to go.
Yeah.
I see. I mean, we've got quite a few. Oh, no. You had one more question, didn't you, Lilia?
Yes, the second my question is, how can universities better support PhD students?
How can universities budget?
Better support PhD students.
Oh, right. Well, it's time and money, isn't it? Unfortunately, there's no easy way to do this. So we had, in the UK, we had something called the Bond Report, which was a government, Professor Bond did a big research white paper and report for the government about the state of UK PhD studentships, because a UK PhD used to just be 3 years. And the conclusion of the Bond report was that we were failing and falling behind with our PhD students compared to the United States. And of course, the United States funds PhDs that are 5 years long. So of course, you're coming out much more competitive. So unfortunately, the very uncreative answer to that is time and money. Now, the creative answer, because there is no time and money anywhere, the creative
It's very important impact.
Yeah, the creative answer really is with vertical chains of mentoring. You need to make sure that PhD students are assigned the correct mentor, give them as long as they can to do their PhD, and if there are opportunities for secondments, like something we have in CAMAX, for instance, and this can work really well if you can make it work logistically at your institution. In CAMAX, which I'll talk about right at the end, we have industry partners coming to us wanting us to do short 3-6 month projects with them on particular industrial problems. They pay us for those. But if we don't have capacity, what we quite often do is we provide an internship opportunity for a PhD student.
Mm-hmm.
So we will, and that PhD student will be attached to a postdoc and an academic lead for that project. That gives them a 3 to 6 month extension on their PhD, as well as giving them an opportunity to do impact. And crucially, it's kind of free for the university because the external partner is paying. Now, if you can set up something like that, it can work really well, but they're not the. I'll talk about CAMAX at the end, but that can be a really good way to do it.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Tom.
No worry. Roman, and then I'd probably better get on with quickly, Taras. On what basis were interdisciplinary connections calculated? This is an image taken from New Scientist. So I've got no idea. There's no mathematics here from what I can tell. It is just a pretty picture to show you interdisciplinarity. Don't draw any quantitative conclusions from it. Roman, sorry.
Thank you. I have only one question. First of all, it was very important insights, and especially it reflects when you said about applying a lot of grants, because sometimes it is very difficult for me not to apply a new program, a new grant, and so on. And I have a question. What is next? How do you feel is the next steps of your career, of your research career or leadership career or administrative career?
What is next for me? That's very interesting.
Yes.
So I have found that what I really enjoy is providing structures and strategic oversight to help brilliant people do their best research. This is also partly a self-realization that in terms of pure technical excellence, my research is great, but there are, we all know that there are complete monsters out there, right? And I'm definitely not one of them. So I think what I can give, the value that I can add to academic research is by really thinking hard about how to help create teams and create conditions for teams to take on really big, important problems. So I think my ideal next career move would be to really deliver on my DPVC role, focused on innovation, and then move into a Pro Vice Chancellor for Research position. One great thing about being on the research executive of universities is that you are still expected to keep up your research. So for the first time, I really love teaching, but for the first time since I became a lecturer, I didn't actually teach this year. So my department has fortunately given me some time off so I can still keep up the research and keep up the direction of CAMAX as well as my DPVC role. So that's where I think I'm going next.
Okay, thank you. Is it some kind of mentoring, or it is totally else, totally different?
No, so it's more. I think you probably call it university vice president or university vice rector in the Ukraine. So pro vice chancellor is a very British expression. I do apologize. So at the moment, I'm like a deputy vice rector, and I think I want to become the vice rector for research.
Okay,
thank
you.
My institution. Okay, right. Should we continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Third glass of Coke now. I'm going to be bouncing off the walls. One way to, coming back to impact, as a mathematician, I feel this particularly keenly. My discipline is sometimes quite far away from translation, and the chain between between the research that I'm doing and delivery of the impact is quite long. And one way to kind of shorten that chain and make sure that the research that I'm doing has relevance is to engage in large interdisciplinary projects. So, you know, the great thing here is that you are kind of anchoring yourself to collaborators that are already close to impact, already working with companies, already working with politicians, and you are providing, and it sort of gives you that exposure. It helps you develop that personal relationship as well with their partners. But it also means that you're not immediately responsible for translating the outcomes of the work. So particularly for early career researchers, engaging in interdisciplinary teams can be a really effective way to sort of start engaging in impact. If you're a more applied researcher, you can also sort of benefit, I would say, from taking, who is already quite close to collaborators. You can also benefit from taking someone on who is perhaps less impact aware because and more theoretical, because it's going to give your team a different dimension. They're going to look at things in different ways, and in general they're going to be really positive and excited to be engaged in impact-based activities. So you're going to get a team member that's really kind of energetic and positive about translation, because it'll still all be new for them. So interdisciplinarity is almost like a shortcut to work having impact. Particularly if you're a mathematician, you can work with people in the medical school, and then you're already there. Or actually, you know, if you're doing AI, you can work with people doing politics to sort of start influencing government policy and what have you in really cool ways. Next slide, please, Juliana. Right, so that's impact, and impact is really much more about pull in general. I want to talk about innovation now, which is much more about push. A spin out is sort of the creation, is how we refer to the creation of a new company that is built around your particular research idea that you've had. And it will generally mean novel IP, so novel intellectual property, something that you might get a patent for, and then turn into a company based on that deep tech solution. Licensing is the other way that you can push your research out, and that's about transfer of that IP, transfer of that intellectual property or patent to an existing company. And then they kind of take on the commercial aspects of that, and every time that's used, you get a fee. So the process of creating a spin out. Can I ask, has anyone actually created a spin out? Not yet. I'm in the process of doing this at the moment. It's really long and really hard, and the statistics say that in the UK 1 in 10 university spin-outs succeeds. So you could be putting a lot of effort in, and it's a 10% success rate, give or take. So I'll just run you through the process of creating a spin-out, and then talk a little bit about licensing. The first thing that you do is you identify the protectable research. So what is the intellectual property claim? It might be, you know, and you've got to be careful when you publish the paper with this. So if you're about to publish something, you think, oh, actually, I could turn this into a company. Once you've published it, you've made it public domain. So you know, it becomes that much harder to protect it. So it's important to talk to someone early if you think you're going to do this. You then typically disclose your invention to your technology transfer office. If you have one of those, they're really useful. I'll talk about them on the next slide, which usually involves a formal disclosure of invention. And then you work with the tech transfer office to decide whether you're going to, whether there's There's mileage in this, and you're going to try to protect the IP with a patent. They will not always do this because applying for patents is actually reasonably costly. It does cost a reasonable amount of money and can take a lot of time. And I mean, there was a thing in the UK where basically lots of academics got very into submitting patents for our work, and it ended up costing the university a lot of money, and they didn't get any money back. And actually, if you ask the academic, well, would you spend $10,000 on that patent if you were doing it yourself? And the answer is almost always no. So this is the first stage where it might fail, right? Then you've got to got to some market validation, testing commercial demand, which can often be done really with. So we have UK government training, sort of government funded training programs like iHear, which sort of help you in your journey to understand commercial demand. Then you form a team. Crucially, as the academic founder, you will not be the CEO. It's a really bad idea for the academic founder to be the CEO. It's a very different skill set, and you can't do that and keep up your other work going at the same time. And yeah, eventually you might transition into a CEO, but you don't really want to do that at this stage. Finally, you would get approval for the spin out and the company to be formed, and then you need to go and get it funded. So that means approaching angel investors, venture capital, this sort of thing. There might be government grants in the UK. There are things called Innovate UK grants, which can kind of help at this early stage. And then from there, you are officially a company, and the university is much more hands-off. Next slide, please, Ileana. Yes. So this is again going to be kind of personal, and I noticed personally when trying to start engaging with spin-outs and innovation in my research, I had quite a few psychological barriers to get over as an academic. And these, I think, are kind of the main ones. Firstly, and I think the biggest one for me, is that the novelty threshold is much lower than what you think. So as an academic, I have been encouraged to, and we all have been encouraged to develop new research. Our job is fundamentally to create new knowledge, and that new knowledge should ideally be world leading and published in the best journals, at least for our field. However, when it comes to sort of industry, you don't need something that's as novel as a top tier journal paper. Not novel as a sort of a top tier journal paper. And often it doesn't need to be conceptually groundbreaking, but commercial novelty is contextual and not absolute. It's, you can get away with slightly better, cheaper, faster, easier to integrate, usable by non-experts. And these can all create a lot of value in a commercial setting, and more broadly, to the local economy. If you're in the position of sort of thinking about how you're going to upskill local companies, which is also something that I think about in my role, but not really early career relevant yet. The second psychological barrier I talked about when I talked about prioritizing family, and that's really that perfect is the enemy of good. What I mean by that is that we as academics are trained to make sure that our journal publications and research data are absolutely perfect. And they should be. They need to be. But a lot of the other managerial stuff and bullshit that we do does not have to be perfect. Actually, this also applies to innovations. Okay, you don't need to make a new widget 100% good. Actually, an 80% improvement is going to have massive commercial value. So this kind of psychological barrier of perfectionism, I think, is really inherent in academics, and it gets in the way. Finally, it's very easy to think of innovation as a zero-sum game, because time spent on innovation is time taken away from research, and that's really going to affect your research excellence. But actually, in many cases, it's going to drive research excellence. It's going to give you new opportunities, and kind of, if you don't get over this, that you're always going to put off engaging the spin out until later. Like, I'll commercialize that research idea in a month once I've just submitted this paper. Oh, now this grant deadline has come up, so I'm going to just write that grant, and then the month after I'll do my spin out. So that it's always this idea that somehow you will jeopardize your research trajectory if you engage in this activity. Actually, having sat on hiring panels, many hiring panels, if someone has formed their own spin out, even if it's been unsuccessful, it is a really positive differentiator. So that's kind of psychological mindset. Finally, Uliana, next slide. I'm running out of time because I'm too gobby. I've been chatting way too much. I do apologize. As I guess it's important for those of us that are slightly more senior, because it's I know it's a very mixed group. You've got some PhD students and also some professors in the audience. It's really important to kind of de-risk innovation and impact activities for early career researchers. So you're going to want to add impact and engagement indicators to promotional criteria. Ideally, we've done that in Warwick. Ideally, you want to couple. Ideally, you want to pair up impact leader in innovation leaders who are more senior, who have established networks, with impact curious ECRs. If you can include these things in workload models in some light way, that's really great. But again, we come to that's time and money. But what you can certainly do is support training opportunities as and where they arise for early careers, and really push them out. Next slide, Uliana. One of the things you can do as well that is cheap and free to embed this culture is that when you have inductions for new starters, make sure that there is training material and chat about what impact and innovation is in an academic context, and crucially say how it can be good for their career. And part of these promotion criteria, which I've just talked about, because with the exception of the PhD students on this call, you don't necessarily get much exposure to it as a PhD or a postdoc. So starting this expectation early on in the sort of the permanent academic career can really accelerate engagement, reduce barriers to participation, and really help embed that innovation positive culture. Next slide. Again, have a weekly or a monthly coffee morning where you just get together and you chat over all of these things. Next slide, Uliana, because I'm aware that we're supposed to finish at 5, and
Yes.
I want lots of time for questions. Finally, tech transfer offices. Here is the inside of our NAIC building, our wonderful NAIC building in Warwick, where our innovation center is housed. Tech transfer office is kind of has several roles within the university. And as academics, it's really important to get to know them because they're super helpful. Firstly, they're a front door to industry. So Warwick Business Partnerships, run by Oliver Walmsley at Warwick, will help introduce you to businesses that you want to support your grants, and they will businesses will come to them with a problem, and they will find academics who have the relevant expertise to work with them. So that's a fast route to pull engagement. They also help you with IP and contracting, so that push engagement with the whole process and kind of understanding pathway selection, for instance, whether you should license or whether you should spin out, help you with all the risk and public liability insurance, things like this. And they really kind of help you buffer your reputation. They'll help introduce you to a CEO from their pool, from their networks, if you are spinning out, and they will help you access capital. So venture capitalists like Plug and Play, for instance, who we have offices in Warwick, will go via the tech transfer office. They'll say, what are the great spin-outs coming up at the moment? Are they fundable? That sort of thing. So TTO is a brilliant structure for effective engagement. As for other structures, I would say one thing we really tend to do as academics is undervalue wonderful professional services staff. And one of the best things we've had in CAMAX is our program manager, Heinal, who is not an academic, but she's managed the whole center, and she has actively got not only academic interdisciplinary contacts for us, but businesses to come in and engage with us. So finally, I just want to talk about CAMAX very briefly on the last slide, Uliana. This is the Center for Applications of Mathematical and Computing Sciences. It is a cross-departmental center between applied mathematics, statistics and computer sciences at Warwick, with the specific mandate to produce impact, engage with businesses and engage with innovation. We have a really nice model. It's really needed now because we've got AI effectively, and we're in the era of large data, the era of mathematics, as we call it. And so many companies have a large amount of data but don't know what to do with it. And mathematical modeling can really help. With that, what we do is we provide flexible capacity in the form of innovation research associates who are postdoctoral level scientists. And we are just hiring our 7th INRA. They were all core funded by the university, but at the moment they are 100% bought out on commercial contracts. So even though the university funded them initially, the university is not paying any money for these 7 postdoctoral level scientists because they are permanently in work, because there's a lot for them to do. So it's a really great model. We've looked at problems from social housing groups, for electric vehicles. We even did a really fun problem workshop one day on working out the mathematics of how orangutans talk to each other and warn each other of predators. So that's quite a nice model. If you're in the business and want to talk to me about that, maybe send me a message, because we should leave at least 10 minutes for question and answers. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you so much. Let me stop sharing my screen. Yeah. Perfect. So, Ina, thank you, Tom, for your presentation.
Thank you.
Go ahead with the question.
First of all, thank you, Tom, for the presentation. Sure. And I'm wondering, what's the main industry with with demand for applied mathematics services in CAMAC?
So applied mathematics is an interesting term. Most industries at the moment are demanding statistics and data science, which you might include in applied mathematics, you might not include in applied mathematics. There's a lot of battery work at the moment. Electric vehicles, sustainable mobility. That's kind of more traditional applied mathematical modeling. There's a reasonable amount of defense work that can be done, particularly around nuclear. There's a high demand for applied mathematics in, for instance, working out how to clean up nuclear messes. For instance, if you have a nuclear device or a chemical weapon explode in an area where you have porous concrete, for instance, how do you clean those surfaces effectively? So there's a lot of demand for applied mathematics there, with a lot of businesses and companies in the UK, because a lot of it is service based. What they really want is an AI business brain that kind of takes all of their multimodal data from a data lake and tells them what to do with it. Now, the process of turning that into a workable mathematical problem is in itself applied mathematics, because quite often they don't really understand what they want.
Thank you. So it's quite popular, I see, yes. So it's not just only theory. Okay, thank you very much.
It's very applied. We also have some biomedical mathematics going on, again, more focused on statistics.
Thank you.
I noticed someone asked if I've been involved in international research projects. Yes. Currently, I have a project with a professor in UPenn in the US on evaporative cooling of hydrogel with hydrogels. The Horizon Europe project that I mentioned was also in collaboration with some researchers and companies in France. I've worked with people in France. I've worked with people in Australia. I do that quite a lot. One of the fun things that I'm doing at the moment is actually working out where I'm in charge for Warwick now of our international seed funds, which research we fund with it. So that's really fun. So it's quite nice seeing all the different projects that are coming up and deciding which one to fund. Any other questions?
I would assume last one or last few.
Okay. Last one, and then I'm going to finish these sausages.
So I would like to ask, do you know, so when you told about seed funds that you're doing now, you were very like, it looks like you have a lot of joy there. So do you know, can you tell us about any very interesting or surprising research proposals that you had last time?
Yes, so I had a really fun one between Warwick and Monash on atomically thin moire materials. And if you've ever been driving along the motorway and you've seen like a grated surface, and you see another grated surface behind it, as you move, you see kind of these patterns evolving as the two different meshes slip past each other. Well, the idea behind moire materials is they're not a single atom thick. They're actually, you get two single atomic sheets, like sort of like a carbon nanotube, like graphene, two sheets of graphene, for instance. And they have this kind of mesh-like atomic structure. But you don't overlay them exactly. You twist them slightly. And that way, due to the degree of twist, you get this sort of really interesting low conductance properties. So there's a really interesting potential use for them in low energy electronics. and semiconductors. So I thought that was just a really nice project that I enjoyed. Ilona.
Yes, thank you a lot for your presentation. I have one little question. In your your speech, began from your personal background, your career, education process, and I have a question. Your opinion for receive successful grant application, personality, personal background, experience, all idea of your application more
which is more important?
Impact for win this grant.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there, and it's all very important. In the UK, there are two different types of funding, and the EU funding as well kind of falls into this. You have a grant and you have a fellowship. A grant is predominantly about the idea, it being a good idea, and the ability of the team to deliver as well. But you are judged on the idea, and a fellowship is 50% the idea and 50% you as a future research leader. So these would be things like the EIRC starting grant and things of that nature, whereas kind of the pillar 2 stuff would be more like grants, as I understand it. I would say that once you have a competitive CV, a competitive personal profile, and once you have a good idea, and once you can write grants at a sufficiently good level, then the rest is luck. I'm afraid to say, because actually you're looking at 10% success rates. So really, once you have all these three things, the most important ability is resilience, the ability to keep applying for things, to take feedback, to tweak, and to not mentally break is really important. Because actually, if you draw a line between amount of funding received, if your y-axis is amount of funding received and your x-axis is number of applications, then and you plot every member of your staff on there, then you're going to get more or less a straight line. There's no secret art. There's no source of dark wisdom. It is perseverance, unless you're doing something wrong. And that's why mentoring is very important, because you don't want to persevere through this and then 10 applications in realize that you're not putting in a good application. So that's why it's really important to engage in mentoring, as I discussed. Okay.
Tom,
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time.
Very much.
Thank you for sharing your personal experience and also highlighting the importance of mentorship. I think it's something that is undervalued, overlooked back in Ukraine. So I hope probably you would give, kind of a good example and a little bit of an inspiration for our cohort to also start thinking who they can mentor and who are they mentor, academically saying. So thank you so much, and have a great evening.
Brilliant. Thank you all for coming, and I hope to see you in February when you come to Warwick.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.